There were rumors about President Russell Marian's health, but now we know the truth. He's been in and out of the hospital since he turned 100, and his doctors don't give him much hope. It's clear that he's slowly passing away. President Nelson had an amazing life. He built a successful family business while also leading a church. There are over 17 million members, but the big question is, will his 100th birthday be his last? Let's look at the facts in his most recent health report. Russell Marian Nelson was born on September 9, 1924, in Salt Lake City, Utah. His parents were Edna Marion Nelson and Maran Smart. He has two sisters and a brother. A reporter for the Desert News and later became general manager at Gillum Advertising. His parents were not practicing members of the Latter-day Saint faith, but they did send him and his siblings to Sunday school. He was baptized at the church and became a member when he was 16. As a boy, he had a lot of different interests. He helped his father run his advertising business and worked part-time in a photo studio, a bank, and a post office. Russell Nelson was on his school's debate team and played the piano and football. He once joked that he would watch out for his hands because he wanted to be a heart surgeon one day. It turned out that was serious, because he did end up cutting people open for a living. Russell Nelson had a beautiful singing voice and sang in church a lot. His future wife Dancel White also had a beautiful singing voice. He knew he had found Mrs. Right as soon as he heard her sing. 3 years later, on August 31st, 1945, he married her. Dancel finished her bachelor's degree and worked as a teacher until they had their first child. She gave up a lot to make sure her family did well. Nelson and Dancel agreed to have their first child. Before they got married, they had 6 girls. In the end, they had 10 children and gave them the best life they could afford. Sadly, Danelle died peacefully in Salt Lake City in 2005, and so did her husband, Russell. Nelson was with her. Nelson was a busy teen and adult. In his mid-teens, he went to LDS Business College and worked as an assistant secretary at a bank. After high school, he got into the University of Utah and joined the Beta Epsilon chapter of Sigma Chi. He graduated in 1945 with a Bachelor of Arts and membership in Phi Beta Kappa. As if that wasn't enough, he went to the University of Utah School of Medicine to study medicine. Nelson graduated with a Doctor of Medicine and was ranked first in his class. He was only 22 years old. After medical school, he did his residency at the University of Minnesota, where he invented the heart-lung machine that helped with the first open heart surgery on a person. Russell Nelson earned his PhD from the University of Minnesota for his research. He was a famous heart surgeon before he was called a prophet, seer, and revelator in the faith. In the 1920s, it was illegal to work on human hearts while Russell Nelson was in medical school at the University of Utah. He was taught not to touch a beating heart because if you did, it would stop beating. This seemed silly to him. What if the human heart could be brought back to life? What if he and his team came up with a way to give patients a second chance? His curiosity led him to put together a group of like-minded people. Minds was interested in the human heart. So during his residency and PhD at the University of Minnesota, he tested the first heart-lung bypass machine. By 1948, he had helped build the first machine that could keep a dog alive for 30 minutes, which was a big deal, because it wasn't possible at the time to be tested on real people, but it was too big to move. Nelson and his team didn't give up, though they went back to the drawing board and started working on a new heart-lung bypass machine that was small enough to work in an operating room. And guess what? Nelson's late wife Dancel helped him build this machine. Nelson was a skilled surgeon and bioengineer. In March 1951, the new device was tested on a human being. The case was so complicated that the patient did not survive the surgery, but the machine brought Nelson and his team closer to finding answers. It was a new beginning for the dedicated doctors. Nelson returned to the University of Utah in 1955 as an assistant professor of surgery and director of the thoracic surgery department. In the surgery residency program there, he improved the heart-lung bypass machine. This machine was used for Utah's first open heart surgery on November 9, 1955. The patient, Vernell Worthen, had an atrial septal defect and lived for many years after the surgery. This means that Russell Nelson found age long. When he finally figured out what he wanted and how it should work, the hospital hired a professional machine company to make the device. In March 1956, Nelson did his first successful pediatric cardiac operation, a total repair of the tetralogy FET in a 4-year-old girl. He led other surgeries that focused on coronary artery disease and made valvular surgery one of the high points came in 1960 when he fixed tricuspid valve regurgitation for the first time on a Latter-day Saint stake patriarch. This condition lets blood flow backwards into the heart's upper chamber. Dr. Nelson was the first to fix it in 1968, and he later did a series of aortic valve replacements. Spencer W. Kimball would later become president of the LDS Church. In 1985, Nelson reached another milestone when he flew all the way to Jinan, China, to do a quadruple bypass surgery on the Chinese opera singer Fang Rengjiang. It was his last operation, and the Fang family is still grateful to him and calls him old friend of China. President Nelson received the Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2018, he and 3 others won Utah's governor's medals for science and technology for their work as pioneering heart surgeons and cardiac medical researchers. He has also received many other awards, such as the Distinguished Alumni Award from the University of Utah, the Heart of Gold Award from the American Heart Association, and the Golden Heart Award. He has also been given 3 honorary professorships from universities in the People's Republic of China. He is included in Who's Who in the World, Who's Who in America, and Who's Who in Religion. In the fall of 1965, he went to Illinois to look into a job offer to lead the cardiovascular and thoracic surgery unit at the University of Chicago. When he got there, he and his wife were having an argument. The damsel and his wife found the perfect neighborhood to raise their 9 daughters. He wasn't sure about the job, but he was excited about the research and professional opportunities he would have. One evening, he met a young law professor from Chicago named H. Oakes and his wife June. He told them about the opportunities in Chicago, and D did everything he could to get Dr. Nelson to accept the offer, even though Dr. Nelson wasn't interested. So he was excited about the job and wanted to hear from one more person. A few days later, he went to see David O. McKay, who was president of the church at the time. President McKay told him the truth, Dr. Nelson would be made head of the department. His salary would be 5 times what he was making now. The school would pay for his children's education, and there were many other benefits. Any sensible man with 9 daughters and a wife would have taken the offer, but Russell Nelson turned it down because President David asked him to. This helped him get ready for a. Before being named the 17th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Nelson served 34 years in the quorum of the TW Apostles. During quorum meetings, he played the organ and spoke to members in their own languages. He is known as the best writer in the Quorum of 12. During his time as an apostle, President Nelson visited 133 countries and dedicated churches there. At the Utah headquarters, he helped the church expand into Eastern Europe and China. He was also the head of three governing committees: the Missionary Executive Council, the Temple and Family History Executive Council, and the Priesthood and Family Executive Council. On January 2, 2018, the 16th Church President, Thomas S. Monson, died. After his departure, the leadership changed hands to the most senior quorum of the 12. Russell Marian Nelson was ordained and set apart as the Church's 17th president on January 14, 2018. This was announced by the Church's senior apostle, Todd Christopherson, in a broadcast from the Salt Lake Temple. This came after the new leadership of the Church was introduced. The President is the highest office in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is the leader of the highest. The people who run this church think that the President is a prophet, seer, and revelator. They call him the prophet. Members of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints see President Russell as God's spokesperson and the greatest priesthood authority on earth. He is the only one who receives. President Nelson once said, "No matter where we call home, members of the Church feel passionately about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Therefore, our greatest joy comes as we help our brothers and sisters no matter where we live in this wonderful world." That's why his church gave out $1. $3 billion in 2023, the church gave millions of dollars to help people of all races and religions. Some of the money went to helping women and children. The church's leader made child nutrition a priority around the world by giving to international non-governmental organizations, NGOs, like Save the Children's World Food Program. The church also improved maternal health care by working with UNICEF in Mozambique and Central African Republic. The Israel-Hamas war. These funds are used to improve physical and mental health care in Israel and Gaza in 2023. In Sacramento, California, President Nelson's church worked with other aid groups to help refugees and immigrants around the world. The faith bought 500 foam mats and other supplies for refugees sleeping on the floor. Latter-day Saints Aid helped fight food insecurity, homelessness, and abuse in North America. In Montreal, they touched lives by giving over $750 to a local homeless shelter. The faith also played a part in Maui recover from the devastating wildfires. It provided emergency shelter and hotel vouchers. It also sent psychologists to help those affected by the disaster. It sent 14,000 trees to Mongolia to help the environment. It put solar panels on many of its meeting houses. And it switched to using only recycled cups for communion. Finally, President Nelson's church gave 20,000 acres of water in Utah to help protect the Great Salt Lake. The church's Just Serve program lets members set up smaller volunteer projects. President Nelson says these are only a small part of the church's humanitarian work. There's no doubt that his leadership is one of the most influential in the world, but the church has been under fire lately because critics say it isn't doing enough. When he was elected president, some LGBTIQ members thought he would change some policies. In 2019, he became famous for overturning the controversial rule that said children of gay parents could not be baptized. He also overturned the rule that said same-sex couples were heretics who could be excommunicated. Later backed the law protecting same-sex marriage. President Nelson's body language suggested he would fully support the LGBTIQ community. However, a few months later, he changed his mind about some policies that he said LGBTIQ members could follow. Church, he insisted that same-sex marriage is wrong because God's definition of marriage hasn't changed. Also, he said that real love doesn't support self-destructive behavior, and he thought that same-sex relationships were self-destructive. He also made it harder for transgender people to be involved, and the church members of the group say it's disappointing that they are being left out because of their gender choices. Nelson is also criticized for his views on women's leadership. He seems to love and respect women, but many people say his ideas about what it means to be a woman are out of date. For example, he says women should put motherhood above all else. He also says women should focus on their passion and calling as women because it is a sacred calling. This belief explains why women are not ordained as priests in the church or officiate in weddings. They serve as leaders and sometimes preach from the pulpit and lead congregational prayers in worship services. President Nelson continues to give his all, even though he is in charge of over 17 million members and is the longest living president of the United States. However, age is not on his side. He just turned 100 and his health is failing. The centenarian is having a hard time keeping up with the fast-paced world, and he missed the General Conference in 2023. He said in a statement that he watched the General Conference through technology and that he hurt the muscles in his lower back when he fell at a downtown Salt Lake City community center. This event changed his life forever. It happened after his 99th birthday party while he was still celebrating. He fell and luckily got better quickly, but at 99 years old, doctors aren't sure how quickly he can recover. To help him get better, they gave him a slow, careful treatment plan. A year later, he's still not back to his old self. Reports say he can't sit in a chair for long periods of time. Until recently, he wouldn't admit that his health was getting worse. First, he travels less these days. Second, he started sitting down in a chair to give his twice-yearly General Conference addresses. Usually, he would stand to address the millions of church members listening, but that doesn't happen anymore. Finally, he confirmed the rumor that he sometimes uses a wheelchair or walker whenever he has a small problem with his balance. This isn't a small problem at all. He also said that his spirit, legs, and brain still work, and he ended by saying that his balance issues should not be a concern for us. President Nelson is not the only church president whose health has gotten worse. His predecessor also had health problems. Before he died, Thomas Spencer Monson had memory loss. Members learned of his health problems in 2015 when he didn't show up to a meeting with President Barack Obama and cut back on his speaking engagements by half. 2 years later, the church leadership said that President Monson no longer visits his office or attends. President Monson gave 2 short sermons at the Faith Spring General Conference that year, but he didn't go to the Saturday or Sunday afternoon sessions because he was too young. He died on January 2, 2018, at the age of 90. Gordon Henley was the church's 15th president from 1995 until January 2008. He continued to speak at church conferences until he died in 2008 at the age of 97. Howard Hunter became president in June 1994 and only served 9 months as the church's 14th president. He died on March 3, 1995, at the age of 87. Ezra Taft Benson, the 13th president, died in May 1994 at the age of 94. In his last 5 years, he was out of the public eye and rarely addressed the faithful at conferences or appeared in public. The same thing happened with the 12th president, Spencer W. Kimball, who took office in 1973 and was rarely seen in public by 1982. Kimball attended at least one of the twice-yearly General Conference until he died at age 90 in 1988. Even though President Nelson is getting older, he's not giving up without a fight. He's also making healthy choices by following his doctor's advice and eating mostly plant-based foods like fruits, whole grains, vegetables, legumes, and a small amount of lean poultry. He likes whole foods better than processed ones and thinks that eating natural foods is the best way to get the most nutrients. His job as a surgeon has affected how he approaches his diet, and his experience shapes how he understands. He saw firsthand how lifestyle choices can affect a person's overall health, which motivated him to put his health first. You can tell his little tricks are working because he is 100 years old and still going strong. He also works out regularly because it helps him stay fit. His lifestyle choices have greatly influenced people of the faith since he became president. The number of vegan church members has grown. Members who were moved by his teachings have since adopted a plant-based diet like their leader. The church's website has a section on plant-based cooking with recipes for healthy and tasty meals. Despite the president's worsening health, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints celebrated his 100th birthday on September 9, 2024. Church leaders, family members, and friends shared happy tributes to mark the occasion, which was broadcast from Salt Lake City's Conference Center Theater, where President Nelson sat next to him on stage with his wife and sister. He was joined on stage earlier by Wendy Nelson, his counselors President Henry Aping, and President D. Oaks. The president told church members to reach out to someone and show them love and care. He used the story of the lost sheep to make his point and told them to share their stories on social media. The centenarian thanked everyone who obeyed and gave a heartwarming speech. He ended his short remarks with, "As for the church leaders, they talked about their time with the president. Holland called him a Renaissance man, and until his 100th birthday, not many people knew that he could speak at least 17 languages. Friends and family sent recorded messages to celebrate his big day, and that was the end of the tributes." In the conference center, Luz Diaz Nation musicians played Feliz Conos, and the crowd also enjoyed songs by Nathan Pacho, Jared Pierce, and Jenny Oaks. Pacho sang Un Offert of L'air, and Baker joined him to sing We Ever Pray for the President. Nelson's children's grandchildren and great-grandchildren sang I Will Be What I Believe. The congregation sped things up with heartfelt renditions of Rejoice the Lord Is. They ended with happy birthday songs and a blessing. The event was live-streamed on the church's YouTube channel, and you can watch this 75-minute show for more information. If President Russell Nelson dies today, President D. H. Oaks will take over. If he dies before the current president, the church's presidency will go to the most senior apostle. President Oaks is currently serving as first counselor in the first presidency and is 88 years old. If he dies before the current president, the most senior apostle will become president.